Never underestimate a mighty master, Warlock.
Hello there, I'm Fintusius, and today we'll be reviewing the state of the Affliction Warlock in Shadowlands. If you are looking for more damage, or in general not being a BFA affliction where most of your damage doesn't come at all, this is the video for you. I'm just kidding, but sit tight as the spec is back with a vengeance. To say that Affliction Warlocks received a lot of love from the devs would be an understatement, as the spec received quite a few changes as well as a small redesign in their playstyle, which makes up for quite a bit of information to cover, so let's get to it. Curses are back. 3 of them to be precise, and limited to 1 per target. They would definitely shine in PvP as they offer quite a mean debuff for just a global cooldown. When it comes to PvE, the same can be said as long as dungeon, raid bosses or other important targets won't be immune to their effect. Demonic Circle is now baseline, which means mobility without having to talent for it is back on the menu. There's also a new very interesting mechanic with Kilrook's Cunning Glyph, yes a glyph, apparently they exist, which allows your eye to place your circle as long as you're within line of sight of it when placing it. Spamming Unstable Afflictions is gone, as the spell has been reworked. It is now a single target dot that you can only have on 1 target period. It is still however a dot with a silence effect if dispelled early, and grants you a soul shot if the target dies while it's debuffed with it. And now behold your new main spender, as Malefic Rapture makes its grand debut. It's a spell that does damage to each enemy that currently has any of your dots on them. The important part is that the damage scales with the amount of dots your targets have. It also has no AoE nor range cap outside of line of sight and is further increased by your mastery. This addition feels extremely powerful and versatile in its usage and is surely going to make the gameplay of Affliction feel fresh with a little dose of being overpowered. Corruption received a small buff in the form of a leveling upgrade, which makes it deal some instant damage when applied on top of the dot component. It's worth mentioning that this damage in application currently doesn't activate when corruption is being applied through Seed of Corruption. Unending Resolve has also received a small leveling upgrade. It now grants you immunity to pushback effects during its duration on top of the damage reduction and silence immunity. This next change took everybody by surprise, because the summoning of your pet has been removed. It now takes an entire weekly reset to finish the cast. You can thankfully summon it a bit faster as a new cooldown has been added to reduce its cast time to half a second, because instant spells are apparently not trendy anymore. In all seriousness, it's quite a nerf in PvP, as killing a Warlock's pet will now once again be a viable and meaningful thing you can accomplish in order to cripple him a bit. Shadow Embrace is now a passive ability. Your Shadow Bolt, Haunt and Drain Soul apply a stacking debuff that increases your damage down to your target for 12 seconds, which is something you're going to have to track in your gameplay if you want to maximize your damage. To finish off the baseline changes, Ritual of Doom is here, which allows you and 4 of your friends to play a gambling game while waiting for those that are late to the raid without having to rely on an add-on. This is a very welcome party utility buff. Now, moving on to talents, Nightfall has been fixed, I would say, by having an increased proc rate based off how many different instances of corruption are active. In comparison, in BFA it doesn't matter whether you have 1 or 20 active corruptions, as the proc rate remained the same. Maybe it won't be useless this time around, but I kinda doubt it because on that row, Drain Soul's damage has been buffed by a bit, but most importantly, as mentioned before, every tick gives a stack of Shadow Embrace, making it much stronger than it used to be, especially when paired with Necrolord's Covenant ability, but more on that later. The Azerite trait Inevitable Demise is back as a talent, only this time instead of choosing arena wins with it like in BFA Season 1, you'll be choosing Mythic plus AoE pulls in conjunction with the Night Fae ability, which is probably a lie because you won't pick that Covenant anyway, but we'll also get to that later. In all seriousness, due to the new Drained Soul being very powerful, it'll be up to tuning to see what comes out on top. Writhe in Agony has been buffed by merging it with the Sudden Onset Azerite trait, thus making it start at 4 stacks and ramping up to 18. Dark Pact has been buffed to also grant you a heal over 20 seconds, however the current amount is unknown. So the Seeds has been reverted to its pre-nerf Legion version, which means it now shoots 2 extra seeds instead of 1, but due to the new interactions with Malefic Raptors, it likely won't be as strong as it used to be. Howl of Terror is back yet again, but to its 1.5 cast version, which we haven't seen since Cataclysm, as well as capped to 5 targets. Maybe some of you will actually pull off an AoE Shadow Fury into an AoE Fear, but who knows. Haunt has been buffed to last 3 seconds longer, meaning you can now have 100% uptime on the debuff. Another new addition is Dark Caller, which lowers your Dark Glare's cooldown to 2 minutes, making it line up with your Astro talent Dark Soul Misery, which by the way has been removed from the GCD. Yeah, I'm not kidding this time, they actually removed something from the global cooldown. Anyway, I know it's a lot to digest, but I'm not done yet because there's a few big PvP talent changes left, so bear with me. Deathbolt is now a PvP talent with a 1 second cast time and 45 second cooldown. It deals 60% of the total remaining damage of your dots on your target, which means its name is pretty accurate, because with current values, as long as you place your dots properly, it can hit for more than 60% of somebody's HP if it crits.
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance! But not for me!
Since Unstable Affliction has been reworked and can't be placed on more than one target, Blizzard couldn't allow Affliction Warlocks to have a weak spot, so enjoy rampant afflictions in arenas, allowing you to have it on all 3 targets. While the tooltip doesn't state that, it has the added bonus of making the enemy healer play Minesweeper with his dispels. Anyway, the fun doesn't stop here for you, because with your new toy, which is Amplify Curse, you can make Holy Paladins in PvP go from feeling miserable to rerolling. It really feels like bullying and brings back TBC memories. If that wasn't enough for you, Soul Shadow got changed a bit, consuming only your corruption effects and a 1 minute cooldown. You can either use it when your corruptions are about to end for some free soul shards, or in battlegrounds for fun by exploding a seed of corruption in that flag fight in the middle into Soul Shadow for 5 easy soul shards gain. One last thing, while this isn't strictly a PvP talent and is just a new baseline effect, it felt more appropriate to mention in the PvP part. Your Fear no longer suffers spell pushback while casting because hell, at the spawn why not?
Come forth and serve me.
Keep in mind that you'll only be able to equip one legendary effect at a time, but crafting your first one shouldn't take longer than the first reset. I'll do another video about systems and legendaries in Shadowlands before release, so it's deemed finalized. Here is the complete list of the legendary effects you will be able to choose from as an Affliction Warlock. A few of them should feel familiar as they come from Legion. The most fun one for me is Pillars of the Dark Portal, because with the Demonic Circle now being baseline, it should lead to quite the circus with teleports in an arena like Blade's Edge when being chased by 2 very angry melee players. You can also throw in a Priest's Grip for even more meme value. When it comes to powerful ones, at least for single target encounters in mind, Maleficraft does look scary. Pairing this one with the Necrohold Covenant ability and Drained Soul leads to nuclear amounts of execute phase damage, where Drained Soul can make up for more than 50% of your total damage breakdown. It also has the added gameplay element of having to maintain 3 stacks and playing around it in order for it to become effective. All in all, current values are extremely high and I wouldn't be surprised, I would even hope that it gets nerfed a bit, in order to give some space to other builds and legendaries so Warlocks aren't pigeonholed into a single choice, which is the whole dilemma between the ongoing #pull the ripcord action, but I'll get back to that one.
Why won't you die?
Conduits make up for another layer of endgame character progression, but since the general idea is that you're going to be able to pick and choose which one you want to use in your selected soulbind, it should come down to your preferred option. What's likely going to happen is that you'll usually want to take the ones that sim the best, however, don't let that distract you from defensive or utility ones, as they are more often than not extremely powerful for PvP or general utility. As shown on screen, there are 3 categories of conduits. Potency ones are all about ability throughput, with one of the choices being a Covenant ability upgrade. The other 2 are Endurance, which is based around increased survivability, and Finesse, which stands for overall utility or movement increases. Keep in mind the amount of which type and how many conduits you'll be able to use is tied to your selected soulbind talent tree, knowing that when it comes to potency conduits, you'll be able to have a maximum of 3 of them as a trade-off for less finesse conduits instead. It's going to be really hard to pick the ones you want to use, as the potency choices look like they will grant quite a bit of additional DPS, while choices like Resolute Barrier, Fell Celerity or Shade of Terror seem mandatory for PvP. I'm even going to add a special mention of Diabolic Bloodstone, because it looks insane for early mythic progression rating.
Just need more power.
Since Blizzard is most likely not going to change their minds about the possibility of changing Covenant abilities, you as a player are going to have to pick one and stick with it. I have created a tier list that can potentially help you in the decision-making process that revolves purely around the performance in all 3 respective types of endgame content, which are Mythic Plus Dungeons, Arenas, and more single target oriented encounters, which will be named as raids in this review. This tier list will have a point system on a scale of 1 to 4 in the respective content, as there are, well, 4 covenants to choose from and you will have to pair one against the other, resulting in a decision in the end. 1 point means likely the worst choice, while 4 means possibly the best one. And now, just a big disclaimer. Tuning isn't final and likely won't be even when the game releases, so please don't murder me in the comments if something happens to change and suddenly Blizzard decides to buff something by 300%. I will surely make an update if that happens. First off we have
Scouring Tide.
Yeah, sorry, I had to look that one up. The current ability on a 40-second cooldown and 2-second cast. It is just another dot to your toolkit that resets its cooldown whenever your target doesn't die at the end of its duration, making you have 100% uptime at a single target encounter. If your target does die while dotted with it, it will grant you 5 soul shards, making it quite decent for dungeons. When it comes to PvP, it is also not that bad, as the cooldown gets reset if the spell then is treated as a spell from an arcane scroll, making it possible for you to cast it while locked out at other things or just baiting interrupts with it. Lastly, since it's another damage over time effect, it further increases your malefic raptures or makes a potential death bolt even stronger. Next, we have Decimating Bolt, the Necrolord ability on a 45-second cooldown and 2.5-second cast time. After finishing the cast, it grants you a buff without a duration that increases the damage of your next 3 Shadow Bolts or Drain Soul within a range of 200 to 400%. The lower the HP of the target, the bigger the damage buff. As it stands right now, pairing it with the legendary Malefic Wrath makes your base Drain Soul hit like a truck. Since the cooldown of the ability and the buff you gain has no duration, it basically lets you play around having those two aligned all the time, which leads to disgusting amounts of execute damage. Even when you don't use the legendary effect, the ability remains incredibly strong just because the numbers and the way it interacts with Drain Soul is just too good in every scenario, as it murders bosses in single target, allows you to have 100% uptime on the very buffed Drain Soul and Mythic Plus due to the ability snapshotting at the moment of the cast on low HP target and keeping that high percentage buff, or just deleting people in PvP once you get your casts off. Nobody interrupted Darth cooldown in the intro and you saw what happened. Next up we have Soul Rot, the Night Fae ability on a 1-minute cooldown and 1.5-second cast, but costs 20% if on max HP when you finish the cast off. It is a mini AoE explosion which applies a dot to your target and up to 3 others nearby, counts towards Malefic Rapture and makes it that your drain life will hit all targets affected by the dot debuff. It works particularly well with the inevitable demise talent for a very big AoE drain life every minute. But even though it looks extremely cool, it sadly is good just for that, as it is quite useless for single target and having it cost HP makes it pretty terrible in PvP too. Lastly, we have Impending Catastrophe, the Venthyr ability on a 1-minute cooldown with a 2-second cast. It sends out an anemic cloud. Boy, that was difficult. That deals damage on its path and explodes when it reaches your target for a big AoE kaboom. That leaves a 12-second strong dot on all enemies near the explosion, but also inflicts either Curse of Weakness or Curse of Tongues on them at random, and it truly is random as for some reason it is not a smart cast, which leads to melee attackers having potentially a reduced cast time curse on them, so hopefully that gets fixed. As with all dot effects, it also works and enhances Malefic Rapture, but since it's just an AoE dot nuke, it isn't very effective in single target nor PvP, especially with curses being unreliable for now. Now that I've covered them all, you can have a quick look at the total points gathered by all choices, but again, do not take this as something set in stone, as nothing is final. I would say that Blizzard is trying really hard on making sure that no choice is going to be the best one for everything, but when it comes to Affliction Warlock specifically, it really doesn't look like they tried a lot. Additionally, this list doesn't cover soulbinds and their combination, as they are frankly impossible to cover due to the possibilities being almost endless. That being said, Warlocks are part of the ongoing #pull the ripcord movement, and rightfully so, as for now, if you want to pick the so-called best option, then the Necrolord one really stands out as it's just too good and versatile everywhere. Overall, Affliction Warlocks are looking extremely strong in all aspects of the game's max level content, especially with their current tuning. In my opinion, their gameplay pace rework going from unstable Affliction spam to the new Malefic Rapture will feel fresh to play, but also more engaging, rewarding and fun for my playtesting, alongside being more versatile in AoE. We all know that good looks can increase your DPS by up to 25%, so we have to remember that the cool looks of casting on targets 40 yards away from each other and 360 degrees around you is quite a chat thing to do. Since it's uncapped like basically most of your spells, it would definitely help in Mythic Plus, as the specs struggled in BFA to even exist. If power is what you seek in the Shadowlands, then Warlock's probably the way. As an additional selling point, let me add that Legion artifacts have had their transmog restriction lifted, meaning that you can have, for example, your floating Manari skull around you as an Affliction Warlock if you'd like to do that. Lastly, shown on screen were different transmog sets you'll be able to get in Shadowlands as a Warlock, courtesy of Lice TV. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to do the whole like sub bell thingy everybody asks around, or share it with others if you want to support me. If you want to hear the full version of the video soundtrack, the link is in the description below. You can also follow me on Twitch or join my Discord if you want to stay updated with what I do and vote on the next video I'll make. Lastly, I would like to thank the OiOi gaming community for sponsoring this video. They are creating a place where gamers of all kinds can get together and enjoy all things gaming. If you want to find out more about them, you can find the links to their socials in the description below. Goodbye.